Ring around the rosy, a pocket full of posies. Ashes, ashes, we all fall down.
The Black Death, or Black Plague, an outbreak of the Bubonic plague that murdered millions of people in the 14th century. It had a serious effect on exploration and counter-exchange in Europe for centuries to come. It spread from village to village across Europe, leading in ports and trade centers in Italy and southern Europe, and spreading rapidly northward, reaching to Scandinavia and the British Isles, leaving only death in its wake. And even after it had thoroughly run its course, it popped up every few generations for centuries. Nothing could stop this rampaging disaster. In fact, cases of the plague are still reported today, despite the ongoing advances in medical science. Given the almost incomprehensible numbers of people who died, roughly 1/3 of the population of Europe, it is easy to overlook the personal nature of the epidemic, or lack thereof. Due to the fear and a rudimentary understanding of the spread of illness, if you were sick, no one would associate with you. Lawyers would not come to write your will, priests wouldn't administer last rites, even family members abandoned their loved ones, all for the sake of self-preservation. People rarely even took the time to bury the bodies. As soon as you showed a sign of illness, you were, pardon my pun, dead to the world, abandoned and left to suffer in the throes of your illness, one in which few were ever likely to recover. Given the horrific devastation caused by the disease, people of the Middle Ages had many theories about the causes of the Black Death. Popular beliefs at the time were that it was a punishment from a vengeful god. However, modern science has discovered that it was really a microscopic bacteria called Yersinia pestis. Once you were infected, you showed various symptoms from normal ones like chills and fevers and headaches, to giant black lymph node swelling in the neck, under the armpit, and the groin area, giving the Black Plague its name. These symptoms didn't show until 2 to 7 days after acquiring the infection, allowing time for the disease to rapidly spread amongst people. But after the first symptoms, death soon followed. A seemingly healthy person could go to bed and wake up dead. This was a part of what made the Black Plague so terrifying. No one knew who it would strike next. Gabriele de Mussi, a notary from Piacenza, Italy, during 1347, provided a very detailed account of what happened when he arrived home on an infected ship. Alas, our ships enter the port, but of 1,000 sailors, hardly 10 are spared. When we reach our homes, our kindred and our neighbors come from all parts to visit us. Woe to us, for we cast at them the darts of death. Whilst we spoke to them, whilst they embraced us and kissed us, we scattered the poison from our lips. Going back to their homes, they in turn soon infected their whole families, who in 3 days succumbed and were buried in one common grave. Priests and doctors visiting the sick returned from their duties ill, and were soon numbered with the dead. O death, cruel, bitter, impious death, which thus breaks the bonds of affection, and divides father and mother, brother and sister, son and wife. Lamenting our misery, we feared to fly, yet we dared not remain. The Black Plague had a lasting effect on our cultural understandings, even finding representation in children's rhymes and games. Although there is some debate, many folklorists believe that the nursery rhyme Ring Around the Rosie is linked back to the Black Death. The opening line, Ring Around the Rosie, is meant to describe the swelling of the lymph nodes. The center of the swelling would be black, while the surrounding tissue was red. The red was the ring around the black rosy. The second verse, A Pocket Full of Posies, is referring to the flowers that healthy people would carry around in their pockets to mask the smell of dying people and rotting bodies. Ashes, ashes referred to the cremation of dead bodies, and We All Fall Down referred to all the death taking place, leaving no one standing in the affected villages. The Black Plague has its origins in the reemergence of exploration and trade during the early 14th century. The epidemic came to Europe because explorers were venturing farther than Europeans had been in centuries, primarily through trade routes to Asia. Although it was wonderful that they brought back spices, they also brought back disease. Many people would die from disease on the ship's back, and they would return to the port with a ship full of corpses. People on the ships, as well as people who helped dispose of the corpses, got infected and quickly spread to everyone they touched, spoke to, or were even just around them, through the transmissions of bodily fluids and airborne pathogens. As soon as the European explorers encountered the areas of Asia in which the bacteria was endemic, the bacteria was attacking their system. A terrifying aspect of the plague was that as soon as you encountered an infected person, the disease was likely spread to you. The mutation of the bacteria causing the bubonic plague across Europe had a very high transmission rate. Having a rudimentary understanding of the vector of transmission, many people would quarantine the victims and not associate themselves with them. Although it seems quite harsh to abandon victims in their times of greatest anguish, when you really get down to why people were being this cruel, you really can't blame them. Would you do the same to avoid death? Even as recently as 15 years ago, scientists believed the plague was primarily spread by rats, or rather the infected fleas on rats that would bite humans. This is only partially true. While that was a factor, it is primarily spread by the exchange of particles from one human to another when they breathed. This exchange of bacteria was even worse than the flea theory because it was so much more efficient. When infected ships of people arrived in ports, the moment a healthy person stepped on board, the disease was attacking them through microscopic particles in the air. This efficiency is what made the Black Plague so deadly. Thus, while spices and knowledge were part of the trade from Asia, perhaps the exchange and counter-exchange that had the greatest impact on the historical narrative in Europe was caused by the tiniest of microbes.